This video is brought to you by Ground News. The Labour Party has won every single National Assembly or Senedd election in Wales since the first was held in 1999. Labour has also placed first in Wales at every single Westminster election since 1922, a more than century-long winning streak that some say makes it the democratic world's most successful election-winning machine. But this dominance may be coming to an end, as a recent YouGov poll looking ahead to next year's Welsh Senedd election shows Labour falling to third place, with Plaid Cymru, a Welsh pro-independence party, rising to first. So in this video, we're going to explain why Labour is struggling in Wales, why Plaid is apparently on the rise, and why, even if we shouldn't expect independence anytime soon, Wales is facing its most significant election ever. If you want more UK political drama from us, then check out our podcast Starmageddon, where we track the successes and failures of this new Labour government. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. So let's start by taking a closer look at the polling. In YouGov's latest Senedd poll, published last week, Plaid Cymru jumped to first place on 30%, nearly a 10-point gain on the regional vote share they received at the last election in 2021. Reform UK comes from virtually nothing to place second with 25%, and Labour fall from first to third with just 18%, half what they scored in 2021. Meanwhile, the Conservatives drop from second to fourth, with their own vote share also nearly halved, and the Liberal Democrats and Greens sit on 7 and 5% respectively. If these numbers played out at the 2026 Senedd election, modelling suggests that Plaid would win 35 seats in the newly enlarged 96-seat chamber, Reform would win 30 and Labour 19. Such an outcome would probably result in a Plaid-led government supported in some way by Labour. Now, obviously the usual caveats apply. This is only a single poll and its 5-point lead for Plaid is pretty dramatic. However, Labour has been declining in the Welsh polls since 2021, and most steeply in the past year or so, with both Plaid and Reform closing in on Labour. So, would a Plaid-led government have independence on the agenda? Realistically, no. After all, Plaid winning 30% of the vote is obviously not a public endorsement of independence, and polling consistently puts support for Welsh independence in the 20s to low 30% range. Plaid Cymru knows this too, and the party's leader, Wyn ap Iorwerth, said last week that there would be no independence referendum in the first term of a Plaid Cymru-led government. However, such a government would presumably push for greater devolution to Wales, work to promote the Welsh language and so on, while hoping to emulate the trajectory of the Scottish National Party, which first formed a minority government in Scotland in 2007, then won a majority in 2011, and had secured an independence referendum by 2014. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The real question for now is why is Labour in decline in what has been such a stronghold, and why is Plaid Cymru on the rise? Firstly, an obvious point. Labour's polling collapse since last year's election is a nationwide phenomenon, not unique to Wales. By the beginning of 2025, a large majority of the British public thought the UK Labour government were handling a whole range of issues badly, including immigration, the economy, NHS, taxation and inflation. But there were a few reasons why some of the highly discussed Labour policies that have stung Labour have caused particular damage for the party in Wales. For example, Wales has a higher proportion of older people than the rest of the UK, so the UK government's decision to means test the winter fuel allowance may have had particular salience. Similarly, the decision to restrict personal independence payments will disproportionately affect Wales, as it has a higher proportion of disability benefit claimants relative to its population size. You could probably also make the case that because Wales has a higher number of farms per capita than England, Labour's changes to agricultural inheritance tax may have sparked greater anxiety in Wales too. There are other potential factors behind Welsh frustrations at the UK Labour government too. Accusations of double standards in its approach to the Scunthorpe steelworks and Port Talbot steelworks, the latter of which suffered more than 2,500 job losses, as well as arguments over things like rail funding and devolution, with the UK government rejecting calls for devolved police powers and devolution of the Crown Estate in Wales. Now, much of what we've mentioned, from disability cuts to devolution, has created tension between Welsh Labour and UK Labour. and Welsh Labour clearly sees the UK Labour government and its decisions as posing a threat to Labour's dominance in Wales. As such, the First Minister of Wales, Labour's Senedd Morgan, has been increasingly critical of Keir Starmer. Morgan said earlier this month that she's losing patience with UK Labour, and, with a view to the threat of Plaid Cymru, said she was tacking to the left. She's trying to set out what she called a Red Welsh way, invoking the approach of the former Welsh First Minister Rhodri Morgan, who pursued a, quote, clear red water strategy to distinguish his Welsh Labour government from Tony Blair's UK Labour government. But we shouldn't make out that Welsh Labour is purely being weighed down by UK Labour. The Welsh Labour government is less unpopular than its UK counterpart, but it's still considerably unpopular. The past year since Mark Drakeford's resignation as First Minister has not been smooth sailing for Welsh Labour. It sparked a divisive leadership election, whose winner, Vaughan Gething, was forced to resign after just 4 months amid intense party infighting and scandal, with Senedd Morgan elected unopposed as his successor. There were other factors beyond the political soap opera too. The Welsh Government's lowering of the speed limit in built-up areas to 20 miles per hour proved controversial and ignited something of a political firestorm, and the poor state of the NHS in Wales has also been a hotly debated topic. Ultimately, the biggest beneficiary of Labour's struggles in Wales has been Plaid Cymru, which occupies a space to the left of Labour, which at the UK level is tacking right, and Plaid's devolution-focused policies may be appealing to those frustrated with Westminster politics. YouGov's latest poll suggests just 40% of 2024 Welsh Labour voters would vote for the party at the next Senedd election, with 24% shifting to Plaid. The same percentage of 2024 Conservative voters, meanwhile, have shifted to Reform. So, the political realignment that we're seeing in England is well and truly underway in Wales too, with Plaid's strength being an additional dynamic. With this final year leading up to the Senedd election, we can expect Welsh Labour to try and fix its election-winning machine, perhaps by further distancing itself from the UK party. Plaid will aim to establish itself as a party of potential government, while Reform has already said its new priority is the Welsh election, with it already polling in a not-too-distant second. All this, coupled with a brand new, more proportional Welsh electoral system, means 2026 is shaping up to be the most significant Senedd election ever. This is intertwined with a number of complex and nuanced stories though, like the internal backlash against the Labour government's planned benefit cut. And there's plenty more to read about this online, with 28 sources reporting on it. The issue is, how can you be sure that what you're reading isn't hugely biased? Well, that's a problem we face when making these videos too. And luckily, that's where this week's sponsor, Ground News, comes in. For this story in particular, they've identified that there are at least 9 left-leaning and 4 right-leaning sources reporting on it. In fact, they've also shown the main differences in headlines among left-leaning and right-leaning outlets, with left-leaning outlets highlighting the scale of the potential rebellion against the cuts, and right-leaning ones discussing the potentially toxic impact on Keir Starmer. We're able to do that because of our sponsor, Ground News, whose incredible website and app lets you discover the news and pulls back the curtain on media bias. That's because every story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the sources reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organisations. But one of the best parts of the app is their blind spot feed. It presents you with stories and articles that haven't been reported on by one side of the aisle or the other, helping you better break out of your media bubble and discover what those on the other side of the political spectrum are really saying. This is all in addition to the biased distribution we mentioned earlier, and together these fantastic features help you to figure out exactly who's behind the stories you're reading and what agenda they may have. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage plan using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.